try that again. Hello, this is a review of Weapons. Weapons. um, so I've been meaning to review this for a little bit because I watched it with my friends when it came out earlier this month, and then I went on vacation and forgot, and then I remembered. I'm like, oh, Weapons. I haven't uploaded a video this month. Weapons review. Weapons review. Uh, so this is a whole. Weapons is the latest horror movie directed by Zach Cregger, who also directed. I don't know if that's how you say it. I assume that's how you say it. That's how it looks. Zach Cregger, who directed Barbarian, which I also reviewed on this channel a few years back. Now I didn't see Barbarian in theaters, but I did. Like it was another recommendation from my friends, and I thought it was really good. I thought it was really interesting, and most of all, you can watch my Barbarian review. You can go back and watch it. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I've since seen it a second time. Um, and something really unique about Barbarian and about Weapons as well is that these movies, I don't know what it is that Zach Cregger is doing with these, but they always they always get better on a second viewing. So I've not rewatched Weapons yet. I almost just said, well, I'll just wait and I'll rewatch it and then I'll record a review. But I was like, no, by the time I actually get around to, whenever I say that, those are the movies I never review. Like The Holdovers. I was like, I'll wait and I'll watch that a second time and then I'll really dive into it. No, and then we just don't record anything. So I'm just gonna record a review. I thought Weapons was, and the part of the reason I thought I was waiting is I thought Weapons was really, really good. I thought it was great. I thought it was great, but I kind of felt like I just have this feeling that I will enjoy it that much more the second time. It's a movie that really thrives on its twists and turns, and I think I spent a lot of the movie just trying to figure out what's going on, and sometimes that makes for like, I don't even want to say a less satisfying reveal, because the end result of the premise of this movie, let me just start there. The premise of this movie is that at 2:17 a.m., a bunch of children, all part of the same class in school, go running out of their houses doing a Naruto running out of their houses and disappear. And no one knows where they went, and everyone's freaking out, and the teacher, played by Julia Garner, is getting blamed. And that's sort of where the story starts, and that's really all the marketing shows. This movie was very, very well marketed, uh, to the point where I didn't. There's one point in the movie where a minor visual spoiler. There's one point in the movie where a giant like gun appears floating in the sky, and it's kind of like a manifestation of a character's fears or whatever. The weapons. Up to debate exactly what it means. But for a split second, I just saw this huge thing hovering above a house, and for a second, I thought, I'm like, aliens? Is it aliens? I didn't think this was going to be an alien movie. It was not aliens, but that's how unknown the threat is at the start of this movie. All you know is that it's called Weapons, and all these kids disappeared, and you don't know why. It's a much more intriguing starting hook than Barbarian. And Barbarian kind of takes a different approach of having an initially simple kind of gimmicky horror movie premise turn out to be much more than it appears. And I think I'm like sort of when I came out of the theater, my thought was Barbarian was better, just a wee bit better. And I think that was mainly because Barbarian feels like it has more to say. I don't know how much Weapons actually has to say, but man, is it a hell of a fun movie. Uh, the premise is great. The structure of how the story flows is great. Although it does sort of have one. If I could levy one complaint that I think kept me a little detached from the movie as like a as more than a spectacle, I think the character perspective switching in this one, the way that it is handled in this movie versus Barbarian, feels a little like detaches me a little more. Barbarian, like, Barbarian and Weapons, and this director clearly likes doing this, both employ perspective switching, where you're watching this movie, you're following one character, you're following one plotline, and then all of a sudden you're following a different character. And they're in Barbarian, it's a huge pivot midway through. You're like the horror's ramping up, and then suddenly you're following a completely different character in a completely different place, and you got to see how this connect. In Weapons, it's more like a novel with different chapters narrated by different characters, and that they do some fun things with it, where there's one character who gets their like title card and then scene, and you're like, what, why are we following this character? And then that character ends up finding something that all of the other characters were just struggling to find, like stumbling into it by accident, basically. um and it's just, I already feel like I'm talking too many spoilers for the non-spoiler section, but this is just a hard movie to talk about without spoilers, because it really a huge amount of the enjoyment of it comes from its twists and turns, and if you haven't seen it already, you should probably just go watch it. Like, I've been saying all this sort of lukewarm stuff about it, but it really is a hell of a fun time. The conclusion, the final act, is so satisfying. I think I was just expecting, I don't know what I was expecting because it was so vague, but there was a part of me that was expecting something a little more heady than I guess I got. I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but like Barbarian's perspective switching and like 3 act 3 focal point structure kind of was doing something thematically, and I don't know, maybe I need to watch Weapons again to like piece together what it's doing thematically. But for me, it was kind of just like a very, okay, I'm following this character's narrative. Okay, now I'm following this character's narrative, and I didn't really have enough time to get like attached to any of the characters, or like see, like the through line was less clear to me. It was more about the through line of plot than the through line of character, and I do generally prefer a through line of character in my storytelling. Not even movies specifically, but just like storytelling. Uh, but all that being said, man, is it a hell of a lot of fun. Like, every perspective, even just, okay, the first introduction of perspective, where, having seen Barbarian before, you see the title card for Julia Garner's character, who, you know, I don't feel like it's a spoiler to say she's the first one that the story follows, and you're like, ooh, okay, so we're following specific characters through this. And then the narrative, Jack Cregger knows how to structure this, his weird jumping back and forth so well to like keep you on your toes about the plot, because really there's a specific character who, if you followed them the entire movie, the plot would be immediately revealed. And then there's other characters who never really figure out what's going on and kind of just fall victim to it before they have a chance to even like challenge it. So there's just a lot of different perspectives in this movie, and but the order in which they're presented and the way they flow into each other is so seamless that it makes for such a great experience. It may have less to say than Barbarian, but it's more fun than Barbarian. It's a lot more. It's more rewatchable. Like, I've rewatched Barbarian, but I'm not exactly like Weapons. I'm itching to rewatch in a way that I was not itching to rewatch Barbarian exactly, because Barbarian is a kind of slow crawl, which fits its narrative and its themes, and like the pace of the story being told that way is very intentional. Weapons is a lightning fast, like, it feels kind of Stephen King-y, but I don't know, I've never actually read a Stephen King book, so I'm just going based off vibes with that, vibes of Stephen King stories. But it's kind of like it's set in this small town, there's all this uncertainty, there's missing kids. It also feels a lot like the Denis Villeneuve movie Prisoners in certain ways. It's got a very similar sort of like suburban town made, but with a very bleak aesthetic that is really cool. I love that movie. That's another great movie. So it kind of pulling from that, pulling from. I've heard Magnolia in its structure, but I haven't seen Magnolia, so that's just like that comparison doesn't mean much to me. But it's just another very interesting horror movie from Zach Krager, and another interesting horror movie in a year of very interesting horror movies. And I'm really enjoying the like sinners, weapons. Like we're getting these very unique, very like auteur directors producing really interesting genre work that is like actually doing like pretty mainstream, hitting kind of mainstream, almost water cooler conversation level popularity. It's just really cool to see after years of Marvel movies, like a real focus on specific creators' visions. And even in the space of superhero movies, you got like James Gunn with Superman and Peacemaker season 2, which there will be a review of that when that's over. But I'm getting off topic. I'm wrapping up like it's the end of the video, but I do still I want to transition into a spoiler section, where I kind of go into more of my thoughts of throughout the movie. And again, it's really hard to talk about the plot or the characters in detail without spoiling. So, spoiler warning starts here. Um, so the first character that we focus on is Julia Garner's teacher character, and she's probably like the most interesting one of the bunch. She's the one in the marketing that you think, okay, so this is going to be the protagonist the whole time. But then obviously she isn't because of this perspective swapping. I don't want to say gimmick, but structure. It's perspective swapping structure. But she's the one who has the most going on. She's got a complicated history with this guy. She's got a sort of, maybe a drinking problem, but maybe it's just a result of all the pressure she's under. Like, it's hard to say whether she just has a drinking problem, period. She's got a sort of unorthodox teaching style they allude to, sort of. And the thing that the marketing doesn't spoil her also is that all of her students disappeared except one. There's one kid that's left, and she's like trying to reconnect with him because she basically hasn't been allowed to see him. He's been, separated from he's quiet, and you don't, there's a bit of a mystery with this kid too, of like, why is this kid the one left? And so you're following her perspective, and it's really interesting. I almost wish they like went back to her perspective at some point, but I guess they kind of do in the end final climax battle. Just sort of like drops perspectives, and it's like, okay, here's how all of these characters ended up at the house doing this together, or at least some of them that we've been following. So that's where my sort of like I didn't get to know the characters enough kind of comes into play, is because then you also have Josh Brolin's character, who is basically like the dad from Prisoners, Hugh Jackman from Prisoners, where he's like, I want to know where these kids went. I want to know what happened to these kids, and I'm willing to, like, the police aren't helping, so I'm going to figure this shit out myself and do some ethically questionable things in the process. And so that's an interesting, where the first half of this movie sort of is where it feels the most like Prisoners, where it's like you're following this person, you're following one person who swears up and down they had nothing to do with the crime and is trying to like live. And then you're following another person who who is like desperate to figure this out and will take any means necessary kind of thing. But it's interesting because you kind of expect them to clash more, but they don't really. Like, he kind of starts figuring stuff out on his own, and she starts doing her own stuff, and then they come together at a midpoint. And that's when Benedict Wong's principal character comes Naruto running in and starts attacking her. And that's such a good mid-movie shocker, man. Like, oh no, there's more of this. Oh, and he's attacking. And it like shocks both of their characters into working together instead of like fighting each other. Because it's like, he realizes it's like, okay, clearly she didn't do this. Clearly she didn't do whatever this is because someone's running the same way and they're attacking her. And then she's like, I need help because I'm under attack. Uh, and so they form this weird alliance, but it's weird because Josh Brolin's character is so single-minded. He gets in that house with the witch lady that's hiding all the kids, and he's looking for his kid only. He does not care about the other kids that are in there. He does not care about figuring out what's going on. He only cares about finding his kid and getting that kid out. Whereas Julia Garner is like trying to save the whole class. And there's just like, it's interesting how these characters almost like don't have a lot bringing them together, but the tragedy of the situation kind of forces them together, which I think might be, I think that's a thematic element that is purposeful and interesting, because I think the director said that this is kind of his response to like mass violence sort of like events in the world, and sort of viewing that through like an abstract lens. You could argue with the floating gun and all that sort of thing. And that makes it a sort of, that's an interesting. See, these are the type of interesting reflection points I could find from like thinking on the movie or watching it again. Because the first time you really are just following this plot to plot to plot, like you're like, oh shit, why is he running now? Well, you're trying to figure it out. Is it aliens? What's going on? Oh, okay, we're gonna follow the principal now. Cool. So we'll get to know how he ended up all messed up. Oh God, the creepy it clown looking lady that has appeared a few times is now just sitting in the principal's office as a normal human, but still in her creepy clown makeup. What is happening? That's another moment that is great, and I'm so glad the marketing didn't spoil. That felt like, so I didn't review this movie, but Longlegs. This movie also has a bit of Longlegs in it. In the sort of like cryptid vibe of the marketing too. But you know what, a key thing that this movie, that Weapons did, that Longlegs was so happy to have Nick Cage that they like, they were vague, and they like showed Longlegs in the marketing. Now, granted, Longlegs also shows up in the first like 5 minutes of that film, so it's not like it would be a huge midway through reveal. But I can't help like this witch character, Gladys, that comes in the principal's plotline, feels like, it felt like the Longlegs. It felt like a Longlegs reveal if they didn't like market if that wasn't the one thing I knew about the movie going in, was scary Nick Cage Longlegs guy. So instead, it's like this surprise of like, oh, the second she walks into that principal's office, it's like, okay, so you're the one doing all of this. Now I gotta figure out how. There's a lot of like, any good multiple perspective story structure where you're like, what I love about that kind of story structure is that it really encourages the audience to figure out things that the characters never could and never will. Because you watch one character's perspective and maybe you have some idea of what's going on, some theories, and then you watch another character's perspective and you get a little bit more, and then something happens that maybe Benedict Wong running in with his arms out shatters your whole theory of what's going on. And then the witch lady shows up, and it's like, okay, so she's a real person and not just like some specter. Obviously she immediately did this. Alarm bells go off. But then for the principal character, no alarm bells go off. He's just like, this is a weird lady. And then you get the perspective, and then you get the very funny section of the movie where you get the perspective of the like loser stoner guy who stumbles upon the kids in the house because he's breaking in to rob it. Like that's hilarious, because it's like, you have figured out a bunch of stuff by this point, but this guy doesn't know anything about what's going on. So he's just like bumbling around and freaking out. He only even goes to the police station to like tell them what's going on because there's reward money involved. Oh yeah, you also get a whole sequence with the cop played by Alden Ehrenreich, the cop sort of boyfriend of ex-boyfriend of Julia Garner. That was like the least interesting section. It's telling that I'm forgetting that section, because that character just kind of did not do much for me. He was just kind of a cop guy. He didn't even particularly care about like solving the mystery. He was just sort of like, I'm just a cop doing my job. Oops, I punched this stoner kid too hard. don't let me see you again or I'm gonna have to arrest you. And then he leaves and he's like, oh shit, I fucked up. It's just like standard cop storyline stuff. But the conclusion where they're all in the house, the final like perspective shift to Alex, the one kid left, great stuff. I've not seen an innocent kid go through this much go through this much horrible shit in his home in a piece of media since I watched JoJo's Part 4 and watched Kira replace that kid's father to hide in their house. That like this kid, the Aunt Gladys, is she really their aunt? Is she even like, how the fuck did she pull that off? Anyway, she's making him like feed his comatose like parents and shit and go to school for like months without saying anything about it. Like that poor kid. And then but then he's the only one who knows enough about how all this witchy stuff works to actually like stop it. The others are like running around attacking her over and over again and attacking like she's using people as weapons and basically just throwing them at Julia Garner and Josh Brolin, and it's like, no, you gotta like counter her magic somehow. You gotta use the rules of her witchcraft against her, and when the kid does that and he makes all the other kids chase her and kill her, epic, fucking awesome conclusion. This is what I mean when I say it's fun. Like, that is a fun movie ending. That is not a somber horror movie that wants you to like think about its themes and reflect on it, what it's saying about society, which Barbarian isn't exactly that, but I definitely feel like Barbarian wants you to reflect on like the way society treats women and stuff. Weapons just wants to give you a good time, to be honest. And I'm very much about that. And I think there is a thematic richness there behind that good time. But I can't exactly comment on it because I didn't exactly, the first time watching, I was just having a good time. And if you like a good time at the movie theaters, which is kind of I think the thing for this year is like Sinners was a good time at the movie theaters. I saw the Naked Gun movie. I don't think I'm going to review that because there's not much to say about it. I don't have much to say about it other than that it was a good time. But I want more movies at the movie theater that are a good time but don't like insult the audience's intelligence or rely on nostalgia. And that's I think where we are with audiences wanting that too. And that being the main thing that I see in the successful movies of this year. Give or take a Minecraft. Minecraft is another one that counts as a good time, but it's bad. Like, that one does insult your intelligence, but it's fine, because we all know it's stupid. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Weapons is great. If you like fun horror movies, and if you liked Barbarian, it's definitely worth seeing. Just don't go in expecting exactly the same thing that you got with Barbarian. I mean, I pretty much just spoiled the whole plot, so as I always say with these spoiler takes, if you're still here at the end of this video and you haven't watched the movie, sorry. I probably kind of ruined it for you, because this is a movie that derives a lot of pleasure from predicting the twists and turns. So I'm just going to assume that anyone here has already watched it. Leave your thoughts in the comments, which is something I don't really ask very often, but maybe I probably should. Engagement farming is good and based. All right. Arrivederci.